Hello, folks. I am Nick Bernardo, your host of MyGovWatch Live, the B2G Roundtable. If you're east of the Rocky Mountains here in the U.S., good afternoon. Good morning to those out west, and hello to anyone joining us from the far corners of the earth or watching online in the future. Today is Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. This series is brought to you by MyGovWatch.com. MyGovWatch is revolutionizing traditional bid notification and matching by providing RFP leads in more than 200 industries using proprietary AI at double the rate of free government tools and at a fraction of the cost of legacy websites. Big government contracts do not start with a solicitation, but all roads lead to one, and your budget for hearing about RFPs does not have to be thousands of dollars per year. Start your free 14-day trial today. And today, we have a returning co-host, Eileen Kent, the Federal Sales Sherpa. Hey, Eileen.
Hey, nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And Eileen was with us late last year, and we had so much fun. She agreed to come on back with us again here in May. And so Eileen is a sales strategist, national seminar leader, keynote, and trainer. If you are one of her more than 10,000 students over the past 20 years who's seen Eileen speak in person or in a webinar, you know she's passionate about helping executives learn the game of how to win federal contracts. Eileen is taught all over the country with a focus as follows: educate the new, motivate the frustrated, and validate the experienced. One claim to fame for Eileen includes setting up the first 30 workstations in an undisclosed location for the Department of Homeland Security. In another, she managed a national sales effort for a large Midwestern roofing contractor, which captured over $65 million in American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funding in 2009 and 10. Eileen has built custom federal sales action plans through her three-step program for over 350 companies. The unique angle she brings to the classroom is real experience selling to the federal government, which includes her own personal stories in the field, including costly detours and how to avoid them yourself. And so, folks, we're trying to make things a little bit more fun in MyGovWatch Live. So we used to have a sort of a boring backdrop of the Capitol building. I'm doing themes going forward. And so we have all of the moms in my life over my right shoulder. And so that's my wife on your far left, and my mom is in black. And we have various other folks. My mother-in-law, whom we lost last May, is in the middle. So I just, the theme of Mother's Day, and I just wanted to encourage anyone who speaks with us in this session, if you want to start with an anecdote about your mom as it relates to your career, that's great, or anything about your mom you'd like to share, or not, totally up to you. And so, Eileen, along those lines, how did or has your mom influenced your career in any way?
Thank you so much for asking me that question, Nick, because really my mother was my hero, still is, from above. She lived almost to infinity, 87 years. I'm actually the youngest of 9 children. Just have that for a minute. She had 9 kids. And then let's add in that she was a military wife of a military officer. And when he retired, and I was about 5 years old, they swapped positions. She went to work and he stayed home and brought the younger ones up. So I grew up in a household where mom came home with the briefcase and dad was, taking care of us at home. And we actually, my elder brothers and sisters, cooked our meals for the youngers. So my mother was Detroit's first female video producer in the 70s. And she was the one of the presidents of Detroit Producers Association, International Television Association, and Women in Communications. So she was a leader in her field, a writer. So I just want to give you a small anecdote, because she started her own business after working for about 10 years. She started her own business, and she charged, I'm not kidding you, Nick, $1,000 a page for whatever she wrote. So if she wrote a video script and it was half the page, $1,000 a page. So if it's 14 pages, 14 grand. If she wrote a speech, it would be $1,000 a page. If she wrote one word on a page for an advertisement, $1,000. That was her price. And she had a saying. This is not the 1970s, and a lady who's over 55 in her own business. Her phrase was, "I'm expensive and I'm worth it." And I want everybody to have that, because we're going to come back to that theme throughout this week, or throughout this, it'll feel like a week, but 90 minutes. And I just want to say that I actually went into video production myself. In the first 5 years of my career, I worked for a city government in video production and communications. So I followed her footsteps exactly. And then I moved into sales. Then I moved into federal sales, and on and on and on. So she was my influencer. She was a leader in her industry when there were no women in the business. And so I'm expensive and I'm worth it. We're going to come back to this because I want you to start saying it, everybody in this group, because we need to show our value to our clients, even if it's the federal government looking for a good price.
Well, thanks for sharing that about your mom. It's really interesting to hear that was her slogan, because more people should use that slogan. And I know how you're going to circle back to it. And for my part, my mom is just over my right shoulder, and she's the woman in black, and she hasn't had an influence on me professionally other than, you know, making sure that I knew to always do the right thing. And that matters in business, as we all know so much. So thanks, Mom. So the first thing we're going to talk about is for someone who could not join us today, but it's a very specific question. And Frank, we're coming to you after this question. So the first question is, how can companies that are not woman-owned, not minority-owned, or a small business, how can they win contracts? Because Sylvia believes a lot seem to go to them. And so obviously there's a federal answer. The answer might differ at the state and local level, and we can talk about that. But why don't we start with you, Eileen, on, you know, why does it seem like small 8A woman-owned businesses, why do they seem like they win everything in different industries?
And I really appreciate that question, because in the news, we're seeing the SBA as well as all the different agencies are putting themselves out there saying, we're really pushing to provide funding and opportunities for small, minority, woman-owned, veteran-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned companies to give them preference. And I just want to point out that they have to meet certain goals, but the reality is that it seems it's happening because the bids you're seeing publicly might be set aside for a small, set aside for a service disabled vet, set aside for an 8A. But I look at the data of the past research. I do research for my clients, Nick. And what I do is I do data dips based on keywords. And the question came from Sylvia, and it came early enough. Thank you, Sylvia, for that question. She's in translations. So she thinks that seemingly most are done. And so I actually did a quick little data dip for translations, Nick, in the last day. And normally I do this for clients one-on-one. Have this, Sylvia, because in your business, $2 billion was spent in the NAICS code that has the word translation services in it. 1.9 of it was not set aside. I want you to have that for just a minute in your business. Everybody's business is a little different, but if you actually looked at the data, you will see that it's not necessarily happening in real life. The big question we need to start asking is, okay, if I think it's all these set asides, those are the contracts you're seeing on sam.gov. The contracts you're not seeing are happening through contract vehicles like GSA, a blanket purchase agreement, or an IDIQ. And these vendors are getting those contracts first. And that's why it's going to mostly no set aside at all, possibly large, okay? But actual set asides for small isn't happening as much as you actually think. They might be awarding it to a woman-owned, even if it isn't set aside. They might be awarding it to an 8A, even if it isn't set aside. But the challenge is you need to understand in this business, if they set aside something for something like an 8A company, in the future, they have to set it aside for 8A again. So the 8A company that had it has a good shot at it again. But as we know in the 8A business, they run out of their 8A, they graduate out after 9 years. So those primes that are 8As, if you come in and get your 8A and yours is earlier, they might be able to flip it to you as a teaming partner. So we need to ask the question a little bit different. What contract vehicles are they using? And then what set asides and who are they using? Because believe me, when they post these opportunities, they always have one incumbent at least, and at least 3 or 4 companies competing against that incumbent that they already know. So they're going to use a contract vehicle or a set aside that those particular companies can reach. That's the reality of this business. So lead with your capabilities, Sylvia. If you're really good at translations, maybe you have certain languages that you do that other people don't do. That's going to be something that you're capable of doing that the 8A or the woman-owned or the service disabled veteran don't have. So they might call you because of your capabilities, and it won't matter what your set-asides are or your contract vehicles. So everybody take this note. Lead with your capabilities, close with set-asides and contract vehicles. And remember, the things you see in SAM on the public bid sites, that's just a fraction of what actually is being competed, because a lot of the stuff is happening under the radar within contract vehicles.
Yeah, and that answer is a very tidy answer federally, and it makes a lot of sense. And I would just add, at the state and local level, I would reinforce what you've said, Eileen, because we see state and local contracts all the time may have maybe provisions. So, Cook County comes to mind, New York City comes to mind, the state of Texas, the state of California, and then municipalities. The smaller you go in the pecking order, the fewer preferences they have. But when you start to peel that onion back at the state and local level, it is a preference, and there are dollars that flow to companies that are certified in those states. But more typically, they're unable to meet those needs within the populations that meet the requirements, or it's a subcontracting spend, but we're just not seeing overwhelming numbers of dollars flow through to those kinds of companies. And Sylvia, I would say that on MyGovWatch, we have dozens of translation RFPs that are out for bid right now. So you can feel free to contact us for more information about that. And so, Frank, I'm going to ask you to join us as a panelist. So let me see if I can trigger that. And folks, while we're waiting for Frank, I will say that if you have a question, please raise your hand. This is a very interactive, casual format. We like spontaneous questions. We will ask you to share your audio. Video is optional, and you can talk a little bit about your business. It'll be on YouTube later. And we're going to need your participation today. There's a few people who said that they would make it today who have not made it, but it looks like Frank's here. Frank, welcome to MyGovWatch Live. Where are you joining us from?
Good afternoon. I'm joining you from a southern suburb of Chicago. We'll say that, about 45 minutes south of the city.
Okay. And although I know this, everyone else does not know it. What do you do?
So I'm a direct sales rep for fiber-tight roof systems. We're a single-ply KEE roofing membrane used on commercial buildings.
Fantastic. And I understand you had some recent success with the GSA contract. Can you tell us what's happened recently? You recently applied the GSA contract?
So not necessarily. So a consultant architect has listed our products on the GSA schedule. So he had, he found out that I started working for Fibertight. We worked together on a contracting basis in my previous career. And so his contract was up with the manufacturer that he was currently using, the roofing membrane manufacturer that he had listed on their schedule. And it was just good timing where we were able to get all of the Fibertight products in there. Fibertight has a unique reinforcement inside their roofing membrane that gives it a superior strength and puncture resistance and longevity. So we're also a industrial fabric company. Seaman Corporation makes industrial fabrics for military tarps, tents, fuel tanks. And so that same technology is used in our roofing membranes, and they offer extreme durability in all kinds of climates. So we're happy to have our products listed on the GSA, but we've not had any sales yet. So success to me is sales and POs written, but we're getting close.
Well, it turns out Eileen knows a little bit about roofing.
Yeah, I was excited to see that.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like maybe the idea here that we're talking about would be, you have a GSA contract, or you have a mechanism that allows you to supply through a GSA contract schedule. What do we do with that next? And so, Eileen, that's like an underhanded softball pitch. Take it away.
Oh, thank you so much for it. And also, by the way, Frank, I'm in the northern suburbs, so I'm not too far away from you. Good stuff.
Wonderful. We'll have to meet up for lunch sometime.
Great. Well, just to let you know, there's a couple things you need to know about the GSA schedule itself. It's really exciting that you have your items on it, but the challenge is who's actually putting the rooftops on? Who's speccing the rooftops? Who's handling the services for that? Okay. So what tends to happen, and when I was working with the company that I was working with, we had the services wrapped around, and then we worked with manufacturers to provide their items on our contract vehicle. And we were pretty surprised to find that a lot of the business that we got saying we were on GSA schedule, I just want to say in your business, saying we were on GSA schedule got us in the door, because GSA manages the federal buildings. There's an agency called Public Building Services. Public Building Services manages, but I want to brace you for this. Public Building Services sometimes doesn't use GSA schedules to buy things. So
I'm aware.
Yep, that would take a deep dive analysis. Typically what I do is see what the process is. But here's what I learned when I was selling for the roofing company. Out of the 65 million that we won, and this was, 10 years ago, but things haven't changed that much because I've done work with other roofing companies. Out of the 65 million, Frank, 4 of it was on schedule.
Okay.
And the rest was through teaming partners that were also on schedule, or primes that were doing the building envelope and needed our supplies. They were really happy that supplies were on schedule so that they could justify the rates. But in many cases, you're going to be going after this marketplace. This is going to be a badge of honor, or let's say a ski patch on your jacket. You can go to the Black Diamond now. You can go skiing, but they might say, okay, now that you've got that patch, we're going to do some moguls and some other crazy things to get to this client. Because what'll typically happen, and we can look at the data to do that, one-on-one at some point, but they like to use their, what we call, and they literally use this phrase with me when I called on them. Okay. They like their usual suspects.
Sure. And fiber type definitely isn't.
Well, Walsh, you know who I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
The neighbors. They like their usual suspects. So while you're going in and talking to maybe small roofers that do services, there might be some small roofers that do services, and you say, I'm on GSA too, can I supply you, and you can prime and I can sub. Or you go to the primes that have IDIQs, these large businesses with Public Building Services and Army Corps of Engineers. There might be some teaming and supplies that way. You probably won't be using your GSA schedule for that stuff. But again, the fact that you're on it gives you that badge of honor. So
okay.
Use it as a stamp of approval, a good housekeeping seal, but prepare your heart for you're going to be closing deals by different contract vehicles and set asides besides the GSA schedule. It's not everything. So brace yourself for that, but it's good to have it. Closing a deal on GSA would be, if it's supplies, if it's over 25,000, they need to post it on eBay and get 3 written quotes. Okay. Over 25,000. Under 25,000, they can buy supplies from you direct without just literally going on GSA Advantage and buying things from you. So if it's it's under 25K, they can just click and buy. But in your case, it's going to be custom. They're going to need certain supplies. They're going to need to talk to you. It's probably going to be over 25K. If it comes through eBuy, take a look at the specs, because you know your competitors. You can read your competitors' specs pretty quickly and sell your best values, which is it's an impenetrable membrane. So if you want to seal this rooftop in a certain way, or however the level is, explain that, because yours might best value. It might be higher price, but you can justify it through those best value qualities you were just talking about. So bring
Wonderful.
that to the table when you're talking to the primes, when you're talking to roofing services contractors, and when you're talking to those architects and designers. Tell them, spec this in so that it's my membrane, not the name brand, but the specs of it.
Yep.
Does that help?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we have a unique ASTM that could allow us to maybe corner into some specifications there that would limit the competition. So that's pretty much what I do every day, is try to get me in the specs, try to get the roofers to suggest it, and owners to buy into it as well. So
right,
government's just another arm.
Talk to the primes. Talk to the primes or also the other GSA schedule roofers that offer services. Talk to them.
Okay. Excellent.
And,
thank you very much.
And Frank, you're aware that typically the contact information, or at least there is a point of contact in the GSAE library for roofing contractors. You are aware of that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've been through all of that.
Yeah, and so you mentioned a term of art there. I think it was ASTM. Is that related to roofing?
It's the American Society for Testing and Measurements, maybe. It's a classification vehicle for different materials to prove what's in them or what isn't in them. It's basically used for our case to prove how much solid plasticizer we use in our sheet, which makes our sheets not only more durable but also more flexible. And a solid plasticizer versus the liquid plasticizer in a single ply roofing membrane that allows the material to stay flexible for a longer period of time. Liquid plasticizers have a tendency to try to escape from the membrane, which will make them brittle over time. And our solid plasticizer, we use a DuPont Alveloy. Our ASTM 6754 guarantees that there's at least 50% of that alveloy in our sheets. And that's what makes our ASTM standard. It's a standard in the industry to guarantee what we're using in our sheet, and other manufacturers have to prove that that's what's in their formula as well, if they want to meet the same standard as Fibertite.
It's fascinating. I'm sorry, I was just going to say it's really interesting to me how talking to different people always exposes me to new industries, right? So I'm aware of roofing products, but I now know more about roofing products after 2 minutes than I did for the first several decades of my life. So thank you for that.
No, you're welcome. Nobody thinks about their roof until it's leaking.
And I was curious, to what extent are you interested in federal contracting versus state and local?
I sell roofing membrane, so I am not biased to who the buyer is. Happy to sell it to anybody worldwide. Yeah.
And so folks, on this webinar, you're going to hear a lot from Eileen on getting ahead of the sale and building a sales pipeline. There's also another thing you could be looking at as far as state and local procurements. So as government agencies locally, and we have hundreds of these, if not thousands, on MyGovWatch now, where people say they're going to be building things, they say they're going to be redeveloping parts of their counties or cities, or there are construction projects that are being announced. You can actually use the Q&A process in a procurement to build awareness of your product. So I think the term you used was a solid plastic. What was it? Solid?
It's plasticizer. It's a DuPont. Its trade name is Alveloy. Yeah, it's what makes the material. It's a PVC base. That's what makes it go from a PVC pipe to a flexible membrane.
So in a construction procurement, are you going to require your builder to use this type of product as a result of this solicitation? What a great way to build brand awareness around your product within an open solicitation. So I would encourage you to do that, state and local and federal as well. Eileen, other thoughts?
Fantastic.
Yep. I have one more thing to share with you in terms of that particular best value, which I'm going to keep saying. If you start to talk to federal end users, program and project managers, maybe you won't be able to sell directly to them. You have to go around and, through, you're going to teach them to ask for, and then give them that statement, ask for this of your primes, and then you're the only one. So I would suggest a really great place to be or be seen is at the Society of American Military Engineers. Go to their events, go to their national events, meet as many, because a lot of the facility people are at those, and you're going to get names and numbers of teaming partners as well as the end users. And I think you need to just say, ask for, fill in that blank. Like when I sold roofing, our safety record, because we were service, our safety record, our EMR rating, which is an insurance rating for how you're safe. We had 3,000 roofers at our company and one broken arm like 5 years before. So our EMR rating was like 0.56, which everybody goes, holy mackerel. Did you see his face? Whoa, that's ridiculous. So we taught our end users to say, ask for the EMR rating, because we know we would smoke everybody on that best value. Price didn't matter. I'm expensive, but I'm worth it because we're safe.
Awesome. And I love that quote too. I'm gonna be throwing that one around regularly now. Thank you.
So, hey, Frank, stay with us. I suspect that we will have some more time if you have some follow-up questions. So please stay with us and let's talk a little bit more as we go through this. Before we get to the next item or the next question, Eileen, I just want to read off a sponsorship. So Co-Prince McCall Potroff is a boutique federal government contracting law firm located in Lawrence, Kansas. If government contracting is important to your business, you owe it to yourself to work with attorneys who understand the government's complex rules, regulations, and processes. Co-Prince McCall Potroff provides comprehensive legal solutions to federal government contractors, period. But just because they're focused does not mean their practice is narrow. If you need legal assistance with a federal government contracting matter, they can probably help. And in those few cases where they can't, they can probably refer you to someone who can. To contact Co-Prince McCall Potroff for assistance, call 785-200-8919 or email info@coprince.com, KOPRINCE.com. And so a question for you, Eileen, and this is really, a generalized question for anyone who's interested in federal contracting. What are some of the other things people should be doing to become successful in the federal marketplace?
Well, could be a good long laundry list, but we really need to get realistic and focused. So how do we get focused? The first thing we need to do is get training, which you're here today, which is great. Get training on the federal sales game, how to play to win this, which means, and this is one of my trainings that I do, but something similar to it from whomever you know and trust and love that's been doing this for over 20 years. So the idea here is knowing and understanding who are the different people within the government that you need to talk to, how to pivot between those people, also understanding the contract vehicles and the set asides, the things that they prefer. So that's step one. Step two is you need to get intelligence on who buys what you sell from whom and how. And that data is available. Can you imagine? It's like a dream come true. Can you imagine just saying, I wonder if anybody with this keyword buys what I sell, and are they doing set asides? Like the question I answered a little while ago when they said, it seems like they're giving, I'm like, actually, it's not. 1.9 billion of 2 billion is being set aside for smalls. The answer's there. But you can also see exactly who does the buying, what contract vehicles they use, when they actually did it, how many bids they got. Crazy great information is out there. So you need to do your homework, and then you need a plan. You need a federal sales action plan that's only focused on 2 to 3 agencies or departments and the agencies within. Now, you're also going to need to have someone to execute that plan, because you can have a plan, but if no one's actually making the calls and doing outreach. So we need to start developing relationships at the agency level with the people who buy what we sell, who spec what we sell. And you know what the big boys call this? Driving the opportunity. And what are they really saying? Driving the opportunity to us. So just like in commercial, you need to meet people. You need to find out what their pains are. You need to address their pains. You need to be able to create some sort of spec and budget for them. And then what happens is it goes out to the public bid site, or it gets put on a GSA schedule or some sort of contract vehicle that no one can see but you, because you're on it, right? You got to get in there early and often, develop relationships with the handful of agencies you're going to focus on. So for example, with Frank, it would be Public Building Services is an obvious one to reach out to. Army Corps of Engineers is another obvious one. There's a lot of other not so obvious ones that are buying a lot of this stuff too. But we need to find out who they are, build a plan around it, and execute it. And we need to have someone on our team doing that front work, doing that reaching out, etc. And then when the bid hits the streets, hopefully we were expecting it. We know what they want, and we're the ones we want, or amongst the top 3 that they want. So when it's time for proposal writing, we're already ready to go with our teaming partners ready to go. So in terms of best practices, a lot of people think selling to the feds starts with finding a bid and responding to it. And no, that's at the 90% point. So we don't want you blindly writing proposals all day long. That's going to cost you too much time, too much money, and it's absolutely heartbreaking when you lose and lose and lose. You need to only write winning proposals, which means the ones you knew were coming, the ones that you knew were in this, your stuff was in the specs, and you're lined up at least as one of the usual suspects. You want to be. So just a general overview is we need to create relationships on the ground and in the field with our clients.
Well, and we have someone with us, Barb. I know we spoke yesterday, and I know we were talking about building a pipeline. Would you be interested in joining our audio?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes. And would you like to be promoted to a panelist for video or just audio?
Just audio.
Okay. So Barb, thank you for joining us. And for the folks who are with us, what do you do and where are you joining us from?
Sure. I am with Airy Engineering. We are the creators of a product called Airy Hub, and it's used by hospitals, K through 12, big companies such as Michelin and GE and so forth, to help get all of their critical documents, whether that's floor plans, blueprints, O&M manuals, safety, life safety procedures such as that, into one place where they can search, find, and share quickly across any type of device. So I'm hearing people ask you questions with a specific product in mind, but what I find more challenging is getting, when I'm on these different sites, getting them to understand what we do and not send me things like recarpeting or re-roofing or bid on, repaving our driveway, whatever. I clearly don't do that, but it's like I don't know what I'm using incorrectly word-wise, but they are not understanding what I'm looking for. We've gotten one so far, and it was, by the time we got involved with it, it was so deep on the information we had to provide safety-wise. We didn't have time to get it all written up and sent to them. And it was on the state level. We're out of South Carolina. We're headquartered in South Carolina. We're part of a much larger conglomerate that is worldwide, and they do construction software and they do bin software and things like that. So they purchased us, or they acquired us to kind of line up with what these other companies provided. So anyway, any suggestions on wording that I'm doing wrong when I go out to my local?
Yeah, and there's really multiple conversations here, and we can have an offline conversation if you're having a poor experience on other websites.
Okay.
Simply finding relevant opportunities, I can help you with that. That's an easy one. But
okay,
without focusing too much on MyGovWatch, I'm curious if Eileen, I'm wondering if you're thinking the same thing here that I am thinking of. I'm wondering, do you agree that perhaps at the federal level, there are opportunities to get involved in bundled requirements where this could be part of something bigger that's being procured?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And Barb, I just want to be clear so I understand what you do.
Sure.
You say you're doing document management where you're able to bring documents in, scan them somehow, put them into a database that people can search. Is that my
That's
clear?
exactly it. Yep. And
Okay.
it's all in the
So
cloud.
one of my clients does what you do. So
Okay.
I'm very familiar with your industry.
Okay.
And so what I would do right now in your meeting with Nick, it'll help you out. Write down keywords and key phrases for what you do. Okay.
Okay.
Document management, document scanning. There might be some AI pieces to what you do, being able to find that data, right? And be able to learn from that data. There's some other things that happen as a result of scanning documents. There's some learning pieces too. So there might be some keywords that are also before they need what you offer. Like, for example, maybe they're moving a huge facility and they have to get rid of all this paperwork, but they don't want to destroy it without scanning it first, right? So you might realize that a huge, like the FBI, they've been talking about the FBI move and rebuilding, and there's a lot of paperwork there somewhere, right?
Somewhere.
And yeah, so there's a lot of data that needs to be scanned and put into a database that is searchable, that people can find this information. So there might be also keywords for what they might be doing that causes the pain of document management issues.
Okay.
So think about those keywords. Okay. So for example, for me, when I was selling furniture before the roofing, when I sold furniture, I knew the pain was they were either moving or constructing, or they were reconstructing a floor. So I knew they'd be in swing space for a while and they would need. So if I saw that, I would start calling on them saying, have you thought about the furniture for it? So think of your keywords and the step before what you do. So then you can work with Nick on setting up your searches properly on these sites. But you need to start thinking about, Barb, the people inside the government who need what you sell. There might be document managers or a title like that that's responsible for the security of these documents, or a librarian of some sort that handles these documents. So trying to find them is going to be your key so that they start asking for your type of service. If it's construction documents, it's going to be someone in an architect or project manager or program manager in construction inside the government that's handling construction projects. If it's medical records, you're going to be talking to a medical records manager, right? So it might be a different title. So think of those different titles, because you want to start developing relationships with those people so they start asking. The next question you need to ask yourself, so your question creates questions, right? So the next question you need to ask yourself is, who's buying what I sell and who are they buying it from? So then once you create your focused agencies, you're going to go after them as well as the primes, who, just like what Nick said, might be bundling a whole service where the document management might be part of. So you're going to be working at two levels, going after the specific agencies or people within those agencies that handle document management versus their primes as well. And you're going to work both those. But you're also going to need to find out too, what contract vehicles are they using to buy document management services? So there are categories on GSA schedule for that. But the next question is, are they using it? So you need to kind of ask yourself these questions, and through research, the answers to those questions can be found. And I can tell you right now, Barbara, they're buying a lot of what you sell. I can guarantee.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And Nick, I'll get with you offline, because we do have a GSA schedule, because we work with a couple of the VA hospitals and have a huge bid out to one out west. So, we're familiar with that part of it. It was just more of our local level, it was going off the rails for us too quickly. So.
Well, Barb, I just put a couple of titles into the chat. Are you aware of an RFP due in June with the state of Maryland, Enterprise Document Management Systems?
I am not, but we have a vendor that works with us in Maryland. So it's called ArchScan. And they would probably be doing that one because they hold the GSA title for us right now, but they're a vendor for us as
Okay,
well.
so yes. So let's have an offline conversation. I'll
Yeah.
follow up with you after the webinar.
Okay.
There's also something with the Texas Association of School Boards. I was just doing some searches while you were talking with Eileen.
Okay.
So those are just two things that popped up immediately, but so I will reach out after the webinar and please stay with us.
I will. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Elaine.
And folks,
My pleasure.
before we go further, folks, I'm just going to encourage anyone who's with us. It's going to be pretty loosey-goosey, the way that my grandmother used to say, in terms of the remainder of our session today. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Parag Gupta, I know we spoke briefly yesterday. I'm going to ask you to join us in a moment if you'd like to talk a little bit about what you'd like to accomplish. But before we do that, I had another question. So people are always asking Eileen about RFPs. And, you know, the bid, no bid process, and I obviously have a lot of thoughts about that, but what are some best practices that you're aware of in a bid, no bid decision, and then in responding to an RFP?
Great. So, wow, that's a lot. I actually have a 1 hour bid, no bid, to bid or not to bid. That's a $64,000 question. So the first thing I'm going to try to do it in 3 minutes or less as best I can. So the first thing I want you to do is enumerate how much time and money it would take for you to write a particular bid that you're seeing. That's the first thing I need you to just take in, is just how much is this going to cost us to write this? Is it going to cost you hours? Are you going to hire a proposal writer? Are you going to bring in subs and primes to help you out with it? Are you going to work weekends and evenings? Is this going to take you away from, like, can you imagine if it was Mother's Day weekend and Nick and you couldn't see all your relatives because you had to write a proposal? I had to write a proposal this weekend with a client, and I basically said, not on the weekend because it's Mother's Day. So I did after hours on Monday and Tuesday to get it in. So first thing is what are you donating to this? What are you investing in this proposal, right? So look at how much it's going to cost you. And also take a look at past proposals you've written and what it did cost you. Because demoralizing the team by writing loser proposal after loser proposal after loser proposal is a cycle of insanity. So try not to set yourself up for, well, we have to write this bid because our competitors are in there. I know it, so I'm going to write it anyway. Don't do that to your team, okay? So create a bid, no bid process. And the bid, no bid process that I do is I actually have a template. So you can easily email me if you want, or Nick will have that information above. I can send you a 20-question template that has the Q&A that you can ask yourself honestly, is this for us? And the first couple questions are, do we know anybody at that location? I'm not just talking the listed contracting officer or POC, point of contact. I'm talking about who's the end user behind this, who's driving this need. Who's the incumbent? Who already has been doing this work? What's the contract vehicle? Do we have it? What's the set aside? Do we have it? What are the actual needs on this bid? What's behind those needs? What's the pain behind those needs? The big question, which I teach in my class, Building Blocks of a Winning Proposal, is do we have a win theme? And what I mean by that is, what is the one thing we offer that nobody else offers that's listed on this bid? For example, Frank's, that best value I was talking about, they're the only company that has this particular way this membrane is. So for example, if I saw the bid and I was the working with the roofing company that had the EMR rating that was so low, if they showed evaluation criteria as safety is the most important issue and your EMR rating has to be 1.0 or below, and we're at 5.6, and I knew that was coming and I told them to use safety, that's mine. At least I know I'm the front runner for it. So I can provide that bid, no bid criteria very easily. That's free. It's a gift from me for you for being here. Because if I save you from writing one loser bid, you'll have plenty of money to hire Nick, hire a consultant, hire me, hire someone to help you with the front end stuff. So get your bid, no bid process in. So you only, and I have a new phrase for you. Besides, I'm expensive and I'm worth it, I want you to write down this phrase: only write winners. What I mean by that is only write the ones that you know it's yours to lose, or you're among those top 3 because they told you, because you met them.
That's
Have that for just have it. So writing an RFP or doing some best practices, again, comes with my building blocks of a winning proposal. That's a different class that I offer, but consider this: bid no bid process, creating a win theme, build a proposal library so that from your old proposals, you have some pre-written stuff so it's easier to turn it around. Get your pricing in order, right? Have a great relationship with your technical team, because it's like herding cats. You're gonna have to bring them together and create a dynamite technical, and that's gonna take time and energy to do that. There's tools and templates for that stuff. And then get your resumes in order and your past performance in order. Those should always be pre-written so that you don't have to rewrite them every single time. You're not chasing someone on the golf course on a Sunday trying to get their resume. So get your proposal library together, get your best values together, your win themes together. Make sure you have a good technical team that you can call on that can contribute to the technical. And then get your pricing in order so that you know what the budget is. One of the worst things you could do is write an entire proposal and then start figuring out the dollars and cents and then realize this isn't going to make us money. So get your numbers in the front end. Consider whether or not you're going to make money on this before you write the proposal. There's a lot more to it. It's like a 4-hour class when I do this, but those are some tidbits.
Well, those are fascinating tidbits, and I agree with every one of them. And thank you for that, Eileen. It's really, and I have a follow-up question. It's really kind of tangentially related. And, you know, we do some research around here from time to time. And before I ask this question, Ken, I know you're with us. I know we traded some text messages. I'm going to ask you to join us momentarily as well. And Parag, I know that I promoted you as a panelist. You're next. So Eileen, we want to start researching, and this goes back to, you know, building a sales pipeline and knowing about the opportunities before the bid comes out. And there's this tension there because ideally you want to get ahead of the sale and you want to know that an RFP is coming. And what we find time and time again is, although we always preach that as well, there are companies that are winning bids because they sell an established product or service where the government buys it all the time and they're competing on reputation, and they are able to bid blind sometimes and win. And we were going to do some research around this topic, and I wonder if you have any research sources around this topic, because I saw an example today, this morning. Middlesex, New Jersey had a bid out, one for attorney services and one for like debt collection services. And they had to re-advertise them because, as it turns out, they advertised them the first time and not a single company bid on the contract. And it got me to thinking, because I've seen that over the years, just in different scenarios, company or bids coming out and people not bidding on them. Are you aware of anything federally that would help me figure out how often does the federal government put out a solicitation or a bid or anything where there's just no response?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have an answer for that specific, Nick, but let me just tell you that I have done over 3,500 data dips. For my 350 companies, they each get 10 data dips. So on average, about 3,500 in the last 10 years. I'm in the contract opportunities and the contract data every day, looking at this information. And one of the biggest surprises that I show my clients is a majority of the contracts have 3 bids or less, 3 offers or less.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say, many times because it's on a contract vehicle, or they couldn't find the contractor, or the buyers knew how to place it somewhere that would limit competition. So it's their placement of it, where they're putting it and who they know to expect so that tells me there's a relationship. But in terms of just blindly bidding at everything, hoping that there were no bidders and we win, I got to tell you, I recently had a client who they were the only bidder, and they canceled the bid because they felt that vendor, their price was too high. And they told us that you were the only bidder, price is too high. We're going to do some more market research. We don't think it's going to be this price. And the conversation that I had with my client was, did you find out what their budget was? Did you find out? Because again, these pre-conversations, but he goes, no, because I bid blindly. I said, if you had a relationship and you knew what their budget was and you showed up at the right number and you were the only guy, that would have been yours, right? So the idea here is I don't want people thinking that every opportunity they see publicly, that there's only going to be 3 bidders or less. When you see it on SAM, there's going to be a lot of activity. But if you see it on GSA or you see it under another contract vehicle, or they send it to you in an email, hey, look at this, there's going to be a lot less bidders. But in terms of state and local, they might have put out there, I've seen this, Nick, where a state and local will say, we need this project done, but we only have 100 grand. So people look at it and go, I can't do all that work. So no one does bid. So sometimes when they put these ridiculously low budgets out, people just don't bid on it because it's a ridiculous number, and they're waiting for the state and local to wake up to maybe I need to either meet a couple people to understand what rates I should expect before I post this. So it depends on so many factors. It's hard to put my finger on it exactly.
Yeah, it's just a fascinating topic, and we're going to be doing some research around it. So I appreciate that color. And so Parag Gupta has joined us. Parag, welcome to MyGovWatch Live. What do you do and where are you joining us from?
Thank you, Nick. This is Parag. I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I have multiple hats. So I worked for EY, Ernst & Young. I used to bid a lot and make the proposals and all those things for government, non-government, and like RFPs, those things. And I also have a startup company. It's a 4-year-old, not like very old, but we do have offices in Canada and as well as in US with multiple ties with multiple other vendors and companies. And we are also partner with IBM, Red Hat, Adobe, Microsoft. We are starting with the bidding process for various like government and non-government public sector companies. We have consultants across US, Canada, and India. So that's all
And I
about
apologize, Parag, for asking this. I had in my note that you were in the architecture space. Are you in the technology space?
Yes.
Okay, and just for the purposes of everyone knowing what you do, like at an 8th grade level, what do you do?
So I'm an enterprise architect, technically.
Oh, that's where I got architect from. So systems architecture.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have been like building like architectures, like software architecture for past roughly around 10 to 12 years. I have been into many companies, many clients building their software architecture stack.
Great.
Okay, and you're a startup company. Is it just you?
No, we have a full team. So like I mentioned, we have our head office is in Calgary, Alberta. It's a beautiful city out there. And we have branch offices in US as well as in India. In US, we have in Seattle, Washington, then Texas, as well as in Chicago. We have our offices in India, in Pune, as well as in Bangalore.
All right. And so in terms of system architecture and system design, is there one niche within that you're wanting to do business with the government with to provide those services? One specific thing, or is it very general?
So we have a very vast domain, but our like strong point are in IBM technologies. So, for example, portal or middleware or messaging or cloud technologies or AI, these are our forte. So we do a lot of things about this, and we do work with government sector. So recently we completed a project with state government through our partner company, and it was with respect to building a new like whole portal of the integration of their sites, which will give exposure to their internal infrastructure, their performances, and how they are doing, if there are any downtimes, any errors, or if there are server errors or something. It will publish a report to their stakeholders where they can see it in real time. And they can also monitor the performance if there are any like servers which are behaving slow, so they can see it real time, how it is behaving, what it is doing. And instead of waiting for the site to go down because of performance, they can proactively and take the action.
Well, it's good that you're doing things like that, and it sounds like it's substantial work. I guess my question to you would be, you have the Federal Sales Sherpa with us. So if there were one thing that you would like answered about government contracting, what could we answer?
So one of the things that I learned over my my experience is get the details before you bid. Get the technical details, ask questions, don't be shy about asking questions, because if you don't have enough information, you will end up bidding wrongly. So for every bid, there is a window for asking questions. Be smart, ask the right questions.
We couldn't agree more.
So that is the key for like getting into the right contract. You don't want to end up getting into the wrong contracts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Parag, thank you for that contribution. Any other questions?
I'm good. If there is anyone in the team who want to ask me anything, I would be more than happy to say.
Well,
I have a quick statement. First of all, lucky that you worked with Ernst & Young and you were a proposal writer for them, so you know this stuff. And what I think you're mentioning, not ask the right questions at the Q&A part of the bid process, you know, when the public bid, ask the right questions before, I want to hit this, before the bid hits the streets. So I want to kind of give an analogy for this that I do for my building blocks of a winning proposal, because Praga is what I call the master baker. He's the system architect, but he has all this technical capability. So if you were baking a cake or you saw a bid that just said, we want a cake, everybody thinks they can bake a cake. But the questions would be that would be asking would be questions like, well, what's the occasion? How many layers? What flavor? Any allergies? Where do you want it delivered? What time do you want it delivered? How many pieces do you need? Do we have a refrigerator to put it in before we pull it out? There's so many details. And think about it. If you were buying a cake, wouldn't you go to a couple cake shops and have them give you some tasting for a very important cake? Yes, you would. So only the cooks that met with the customer knows exactly the cake they want. So as an architect, so we'll go back to the systems architecture. Why are you making a technical person? Why are you making me write this proposal blindly when I have no idea what the situation is, what the client needs, what reports need to come out of this, where the pain is? So we need these questions answered before a bid ever even comes out. So we're already ready. We know what the occasion is. We know what the pain is, and we know how to respond, because that makes a proposal so much easier to write. So I just wanted to double down on that statement that you said, because it's spot on, and kind of just land it for everybody else. Good stuff.
Thank you, Ellen.
Very good, Parag. Any additional thoughts or comments?
No, I think we all are pretty familiar with the process, but I'm open for any questions, any comments during this time, or even after this. Like if anyone wants to connect with me directly or indirectly, feel free to reach out.
Well, and we encourage it as well. We have had people end up doing business with one another because they both happen to be on MyGovWatch Live. So, you know, that's why we encourage people to introduce their business, because we want to create opportunities for people, and this is just another way that we do that. So thanks for joining us, Parag.
For sure.
And so I think what I'll say at this point is we have had MyGovWatch Live go as long as 2 hours. Typically, it runs 75 to 90 minutes. we have I would say fewer attendees this month than we have had in prior months. So now is a really good time for anyone who has already joined us on this session, whether it be Frank or Barb or anyone who's still with us, to raise your hand, and we can talk about anything you'd like to talk about. Looks like Alex Castro would like to join us. So Alex, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. You can share your audio, and video is optional. And if you'd like to tell us about your mom as well for this Mother's Day theme, that's totally up to you also.
Sorry about that. I cut out for a second. Yeah, thanks. So our company, Eden Medical Rescue, we're brand new, startup ourselves. There's only 4 of us really involved, trying to bootstrap right now. We've had a number of proposals out to private businesses, entities, and some educational facilities. But we're very interested, obviously, working with the federal government in what we do, being urban search and rescue primarily. The problem is none of us have worked in contracting with the government ever before. All of us, me personally, have only done ever private entities, business to business. And now starting in this new organization, we're trying to look at government work, and we don't know. We know a little bit where to start. I'm on SAM.gov. I have all the registrations and everything ready to go. I have our local PTAC got us set up with a bid alerts, but I was like, what I learned today was, I was totally unaware of, is even the need for networking. I assumed all of SAM.gov was just completely blind bidding all the time. That's just how I thought it worked. So I obviously have no idea where to start with actually capturing one of these contracts in the government sector. So I'm looking for resources or guidance or whatever I need to do to get actually start and have a valid proposal for them.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. And I just want to start with this. So it's good that you're talking to your PTAC, or as they're called now, the Apex Accelerator Centers. That's a great free resource. And we know they have a bid matching tool. I will just tell you that, that's a limited resource. And we have, looked at different ways that they're giving people access to bids. And there's just no comparing a free tool to something that's commercial, such as MyGovWatch.com. As it relates to SAM.gov, I will tell you, and Eileen knows this, we recently wrote an article about the way that SAM.gov requires government buyers to put a NAICS code on every procurement. And so you said you do urban search and rescue, yes?
Yes. We could do a lot of rescue training in the industrial and corporate side as well. So our background is in EMS, fire rescue, with a lot of urban search and rescue and international rescue as well. So we're looking to get into the training side of things. And I'm getting bombarded with procurements requests, for people trying to buy rescue equipment, or fire departments looking to hire people to do the urban search and rescue. And we're looking just to train. That's another pain point I'm having.
Training. Yeah. And what I was going to say about SAMGov is the piece that we wrote a couple months ago is that something like close to 40% of things on SAMGov, they have put the wrong NAICS code on it. So anyone who's searching SAMGov, you should not simply be searching based on your NAICS code. So what MyGovWatch does is it consumes SAMGov data, and then it uses artificial intelligence to try to make sense of the content, so that, if there's a training element to something, then you would hear about it through our training category. If there's a search and rescue, then the folks that do that would hear about that. So it's an overlay, but it's providing value in that manner. So there's a lot to the search piece, and we can talk about that offline. But Eileen, what would you say to someone like Alexander about what his next step should be?
Yes, Alexander, what a great service you offer. I am so thrilled to meet you. This is fantastic. Search and rescue training. There's all kinds of training that's happening in the government. When you think of search and rescue, you've got the Coast Guard, right? You have all the fire departments or schools or police departments that are within the bases. You have a Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. So there's lots of training offered within the government, offered by the government, but there's a lot of outside contractors that do this kind of training as well. I worked with one of my clients, does active shooter training. So their expertise was being able to help, like they helped all the Sears locations understand how to deal with an active shooter. because the Sears headquarters is here in the Chicagoland area. So like you, it was like 4 or 5 retired detectives that got together and created this. But what you need to do too is, besides looking at what's can I bid, let me just say, not looking for what can I bid, who buys what I sell. We need to get in front of them before they ask for it again. So I also like to look at the past contracts, looking at keyword searches, not just NAICS code and your competitors. So looking at urban and rescue training, or urban training, or rescue training, or firefighter training, or like, for example, you've also have a lot of people in the forestry service that are responding to fires, and they have to do search and rescue as well, right? So there's a lot of opportunities, but we need to look at the data of how they've bought what you sell in the past. So then you can set all your keywords properly. Then you can set all your NAICS codes, and the right NAICS codes are in your SAM record. But you need to talk to those people before the next search and rescue issue happens. So you don't want to go after the bids when they're already posted, because again, as I told you, they already have usual suspects in mind, or it's being done under the radar that you don't even see. The stuff you see on SAM is the stuff you see publicly. There's all kinds of stuff happening under the radar that never sees the light of day publicly. So if they, for example, Alexander, where are you specifically? Where are you located?
Los Angeles.
Oh, well, great. Okay, so you're in the LA area, so there's lots of search and rescue things that happen in California because of the California fires and the floods and all the snow. And we're expecting all these flood things happening. So you have opportunities in your own backyard to train people. And being a local vendor in California, serving the feds as well as the local and states, they're going to prefer you anyway because you're right around the corner or within 4 or 5 hours flight or drive or whatever to get to them. So you're going to be able to do exercises and stuff like that with your own local agencies. Like, for example, the FBI headquarters for Region 9 is up in the on the 13th floor in 450 Golden Gate in San Francisco. So they might do certain types of training, but for search and rescue, they might need an expert like you. So we need to look at the data. And I would look at the data in your own backyard for now, in your own region. Region 9 for the SBA, for GSA, for some of the jurisdictions. Region 9 includes California, Hawaii, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. So that corner, and that's enough for you just to focus in your own backyard. So I would suggest thinking about focusing on your own backyard, because you can literally respond and be there. Because you're a local vendor, that's going to be of best value to them. Because normally they have to go to FLETC over in Glencoe in Georgia to bring someone out, or they have to travel to them from the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, right? So there might be stuff in your own backyard that's happening that you can capture. And if you have a few relationships with the people in your backyard, even the corporate people might know some of the feds or some of the bases or some of the schools that you can call on. But let's do some data analysis to see what's happening, so then you can focus. Don't write and respond to bids that you see somebody else's curriculum on that training. If they say develop a curriculum, believe me, they already have a curriculum from somebody. So only write winners, the ones that you talk to, and respond to the ones that you have an opportunity for. But what a great service. Is so unique, Alexander, that I think that you have plenty of opportunity. It's just developing relationships with the key people that will start asking for you to teach the class. That's your best value. The 4 people on your team. What are the other 4 people's names on your team?
Robert Novacek, Patrick Kelly, and Richard Atwood.
So they're going to say that, the superpowers over at, Robert, Alex, Patrick, they're going to want you for their teachers, and no one else can compete. If they've seen you train, they're going to ask for you, and nobody else, you will be the usual suspects and nobody else. So you have to sell the fact that you guys are going to be training who you are, what your background is, and develop relationships. So they're only asking for you and your curriculum. That's pre-selling before writing bids. So hopefully this helps you today.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Can I ask one more follow-up question real quick?
Yeah.
So I see the POCs on the SAM.gov. Obviously trying to build a network. Do they have an expectation that they will get cold called, and is it appropriate to reach out to even the military officers on there? Is that an expectation they have for us to reach out to them?
That's a great question. There is a blackout period. When a bid hits the streets, gates are closed. They really can't talk to you unless you submit a question or ask a question. But if you do that, that's going to go on a list that's publicly posted, and the answer is going to be publicly posted. However, if they got training last year, but they haven't recompeted it yet because it's not available till next year, calling them now in between is, hey, I understand that you bought this last year, and I just wanted to share with you our capability statement and what we do in our curriculum. Let me send you a video or two. Now, you're the contracting specialist, but really what you need to find, Alexander, is the training officer behind that opportunity. So you need to kind of work the website or work your network to find out who that training person is, because the buyer wasn't the one that set the specs. It was a training person. So you got to find the person and the story behind that bid. So yeah, you can talk to them when the bid's not on the street anymore, when it's already awarded or before the next one.
Oh, awesome. Oh, thank you. I appreciate the help.
Yeah,
Sure.
and Alexander, just a couple of follow-up things. So we can have an offline conversation and we can look into our database. Another press release we did recently was that we surpassed 2 million RFPs on our site. So we can look at some historical titles so you can see what are the kinds of things that people are buying nationally, and that should help. I would also mention that for things that have already been bid out, you can do what's called an open records request, and you can do that yourself, or you can use our site to do that, where people use us to complete open records requests anonymously, so we can obtain, contracts, list of bidders, what are people charging for this service, which is hugely valuable if you're going to be competing in the government space, to know what your competitors are charging for the same service. So that's something that's available to you either as a citizen, or you can offload it to a company like ours to do that. And there's a lot of intelligence value in doing something like that. So we can have a conversation about that offline if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Thank you.
So Alexander, thank you for joining us. Folks, we're just at about an hour and close to 15 minutes. I would say, I guess we should do this. I'm going to do one more question for Eileen. It's for someone who could not make it today, but someone who gave us a really specific question. And as we're talking about the answer to that question, I would just say for anyone who's still with us, while we're answering it, now would be the time to raise your hand, because past this question, we may just cut it a little bit short today if there are no additional questions. So that question, the last question we have, is from Vicky. And Vicky is actually in the building space, and it's an architectural firm. And I understand that they have a rather long-standing architecture firm with dozens of people working for the firm. And let me just dig up that question here. What are the specific steps for a 55-person minority-owned architectural design firm to win its first government contract? And obviously Vicky's not with us, but let's just talk a little bit about how that works and what are some things that you can do. This firm happens to be in Minnesota, so let's talk a little bit about that, Eileen.
Well, Vicky, it's a great question, and I'm in the Midwest region with you in Region 5. That's for you too, Frank. So we're in Region 5. That's Minnesota, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana. Okay, so we're in Region 5 together. So the first thing, 55 people, that's pretty substantial, and you have a lot of experience. That's substantial as well. When I have sold construction and roofing to Region 5, they like to say they like to work with the usual suspects. So the number one thing is you need to understand and do homework, which is available either Nick can help you with that, or I can help you with that. We can figure out who the current primes are that are actually doing architectural work in the Midwest in Region 5 first, because that's an area you can own first. Figuring out, we can do it nationally as well very easily. We can do it by region if you wanted to, but we need to find out who they're using currently, whether they're using set-asides, what kind of contract vehicles they're using. And I can tell you for a fact, one of the agencies uses IDIQs. Many of them have their own IDIQs by zone in our region. Just saying, Vicki, because I've done this a while, the data has shown me that, and I've been calling on this region for a while. So they award it by zone, by state, and they end every 5 years. And within those architects, they either round robin the opportunities or they let the architects compete against each other per project. You're 55 people and you have people that have been doing this a while. So you still need to pre-sell to your regional and local offices of the public building services, as well as some of the other agencies that buy what you sell, so they know who you are. They have literally told me to my face that they choose architects by the architect. So if you have some architects that worked on specific buildings, for example, if you worked on the Target Center in Minneapolis, or you worked on some other wonderful location that people will recognize, and that architect works for you, you can do a world tour of your agencies and tell them who's on your team that are architects, and that will get them to raise their eyebrows. And then when you start to respond to these bids, they're going to recognize your people, because your people are your best values and win themes. So I just want to be clear, they are using the people they know, trust, and love currently. And in order to unseat them, you need to do some pre-selling, telling them who's on your team, what projects you've worked on. So that's going to go through not just by responding to bids, but by emailing and calling and doing capabilities briefings, going to SAMI events. We just talked about Society of American Military Engineers. Ask to come in and do a capabilities briefing with them. But if you want to know specific locations, names, and all of that, you need a federal sales action plan built for you to do that. If you already know those locations, get one of those 55 people dedicated to federal sales and get in front of your clients and start selling to them, telling them what you're capable of. Sure, you don't have past performance with the federal government. I didn't. When I first started selling to Homeland Security, the only past performance I had was moving Boeing from Seattle to Chicago. So you know what Homeland Security did for me when they wanted to work with me? They put out a bid, and the bid said, you must have past performance with the federal government or equal size and scope with a large prime that will recognize. They cracked open the door for me because they knew I had commercial past performance and they wanted me. So they'll open that door if they want you. So you're asking for specific steps, and my 3-step program would take about 7 hours, 7.5 hours, 2.5 hours each, 3 weeks in a row to work together. That would have specific steps, but in 5 minutes or less, I hope I covered a couple things. You definitely need someone dedicated to selling to the Fed if you really want to get in. Then the proposals will be easier to write because you already know why they want you, who on your team they want, and you're going to be proposing all the right things that they want. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Absolutely. Fantastic, Eileen. I think another thing I would add to that, a lot of folks who may not do business with government yet may do things that are government adjacent. So for example, if you have done architectural services for a private healthcare organization, maybe there's a medical facility that's county run or city operated. So that's adjacent. Or maybe you've done something for a private university and now some state university has a building project that comes along. So I would encourage you to ask yourself, what are some government adjacent things that you've done, and realize that they are stepping stones to winning government contracts. Obviously, Eileen talked a lot about, federal issues in that part of the country. At the local issue, if you are minority owned, you should look into the state of Minnesota's program Also, I'm not sure if you're in Minneapolis, but they have a MeBUEB program as well. And at least get the certifications, even though you're not leading with those qualifications. A lot of people may make the wrong assumption that they can trade off of having those having those attributes if they don't have the certifications. But when push comes to shove, you need to check the box and complete the program and be an active member of that program, whether it be at the federal, state, or local level. So we encourage you to do that as well. And so last call, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So I guess I'm wondering, are there any questions before we go? I see no hands are raised. So any parting thoughts, Eileen?
Yes, I just wanted to have a parting thought regarding the Minneapolis architect there, because I have a Minneapolis story that was tied to my roofing company, and it has to do with bid, no bid, and writing blind bids. So it kind of ties some of the things we talked about. The roofing company I worked for put the green roof on top of the Target Center there in Minneapolis, which is next to the baseball field. And can you imagine a green roof in Minneapolis? It was 2.5 acres. And when we opened it up, and we did it for the city of Minneapolis in the Target Center, I believe. When we did the ribbon cutting, we invited the people from the federal government to come to that ribbon cutting. They couldn't come. So I swung over to their offices to go visit them while I was up in Minneapolis. And I went to see the project manager there at the federal building and said, you know, sorry we missed you for the green roof, but we're hoping to do some business with you here in Minneapolis or in Minnesota. And she said, actually, I have 3 projects coming up in Minnesota. I have one in Fargo, I have one in Duluth, and I have one here in downtown Minneapolis. And I need you to come to all 3. Now, I want you to pay attention to that phrase, I need you to come to all 3. Because my company thought that they were going to win all 3. And what I was trying to explain to my company, they probably have vendors up in Duluth and Fargo. And I know Fargo is not Minneapolis, but that they were responsible for Fargo. But I knew they needed a legitimate roofer to provide so that they could give it to who they had. So the first bid came out, it was $150,000, Nick, and it was up in Fargo. And we wrote the proposal, and the contracting officer redlined it, beat us up, and we lost. It was $150,000. The second one came out was for Duluth. We sent in the proposal. She redlined it, but not as much, and she highlighted things she liked. We lost that one. It was $250,000. But the downtown rooftop was Minnesota. It was $850,000, and we won that one. So what we did for her is we wrote 2 losers because she needed them for the file, and we did it because we had a relationship with her. Now, there was no guarantees we were going to win it, but she taught us along the way of how to respond to her bids. And the third one, she literally set us up for success, and we won the $850,000. Sure, we probably weren't the preferred in the beginning, but she said, hey, we know you have great past performance. And she was thinking in her mind, we need this big company to do this $850,000 rooftop, but we need other legitimate bids for the other ones, and I can teach them along the way. But she said it all in, I need you to come to all 3.
That's great. That's a
all
great
that
story.
happened in one sentence. So it kind of ties together. Have a relationship. If you're going to bid it and you know it's going to be a loser, you're doing it for them as a favor, but you're going to learn from it. The idea is they're going to spread the love at some point if you have a relationship. If you just write blind bid after blind bid, you're going to get thrown out for a typo or something basic, or they never heard of you, or you didn't have the past performance. But if they start asking you to show up, they're considering you for something. So that's when it gets real. Even if you write a loser, they're considering you for something coming up. So keep responding to the focused agencies. So hopefully that helps.
As usual, fantastic advice, Eileen. So thank you for that. Folks, I think that'll do it for today's edition of MyGovWatch Live. Don't forget to connect with Eileen on LinkedIn. She's a frequent poster with all kinds of interesting content that she posts every week. You can also reach her at area code 312-636-5381 or at Eileen Kent Stevens, Eileen, E-I-L-E-E-N, Kent, K-E-N-T, Stevens, S-T-E-V-E-N-S mygovwatch@gmail.com. And remember, if you're not already a subscriber, start your free 14-day trial of MyGovWatch.com today. If you want to win more government contracts for less, you'll be glad you did. And thank you very much, Eileen.
My pleasure. Great to be here. Thank you so much, Nick, for having me today.
Have a great afternoon. Bye,
Take
folks.
care, everybody.